and we're back. Before we left you to pay some bills, we were talking to Stevie here about his least favorite X-Men creative teams.
And I was about to say that it gets a little more complicated than that, because X-Men has been a book that has had an insane amount of large crossovers that have, like, some have been amazing. Like, you talk about Age of Apocalypse, House of M. There are things that have done a lot for the creativity of the book and have gone well.
I think we're going to cover, what we should do is cover crossovers in standalone episodes.
And I agree,
in the
but
future.
They change the way you're interacting with a book.
So for now, give me one creative team that was definitely not your favorite that you can think of right off the top of your head.
One that I can think of off the top of my head, the Poptopia run. And the Poptopia run was actually a writer that I read. Joe Casey and Ian Churchill, and this was about the time where they were having a lot of the popular English writers come into the book and come into all the X books and kind of have their way with things and do a lot of, make a lot of fun changes. What I found with the main X-Men series was that they had great ideas about mutant culture and great ideas about kind of advancing the story of mutants in the regular world. But it was, how do I say this? But the characters were sacrificed on that altar. The characterization suddenly shifted without anything that seemed to cause that.
Okay.
So, all of a sudden you're reading the same character. You're reading a book where you have different characters with the same faces as the people you've known and loved from before.
Could it be said that the characters had become less dynamic?
Actually, I would say it was more that the characters shifted to move the story as opposed to the story moving for the characters. Most of the things that I flock to, I find I am very character-centric. I want the narrative to be controlled by what makes sense for them. And when you change the characters for the story without the story creating a catalyst for that change, then I recoil from what I'm reading.
So clearly there's been many X-Men rosters over the years. And this is kind of the main reason, I guess we could say, you have decided to do this project. You did say you are very character orientated. This is kind of what this podcast is going to be about, is rosters of characters, almost fantasy booking your favorite X-Men teams. True or not?
Oh yeah.
For those of you who have not read the first post, you should check that out before listening to the rest of the podcast. You can pause right here and always come back. That's the beauty of internet radio.
It's also written in a way where most of the team ideas are described in their own paragraph, so you can open it up to the side and read along as we're going through, and you're going to find, all the information you'll need to understand what we're talking about.
Let's cover each of those ideas in the first post here. Initially, you mentioned X Factor.
Yeah. Now, X Factor, as detailed in the article, originally was a place where the original X-Men could come back when there wasn't room for them on the roster. Then it changed into a government team, and then it morphed into an investigative team, each time changing to kind of promote a different leader. The first time you had Cyclops and Jean Grey and the band was back together and they ran around having their adventures. Then it was a chance for Havoc to step to the forefront as he ran his team. And then you had the Multiple Man, giving him a chance to showcase what had changed and how that had evolved. Even beyond that, with them as a corporate team. And my favorite incarnations of this team have always been the ones with Jamie Madrox, the Multiple. Going into this, I wanted to make as few changes to current canon, meaning that I'm trying not to resurrect too many people or kill too many people off. Going into this, or at least at the time of this recording, Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man, is dead. So one thing I wanted to do is not necessarily resurrect him for this group. Now, as you read through the books, Richter from Rewind That's Big, Richter, who's been around for a bit, was on the team as well. You may recognize Richter from the later New Mutant books, the X-Force books, when he was running around with that crew. He spent a good deal of time on X Factor, so I thought he's the sort of personality, especially since this was part of his job when he had lost his power during the X Factor investigations run. He's the sort of person who would pick that back up and would want to be a member of the mutant community in the mutant places like Mutant Town in New York. So when you're populating a team like that, you want to populate them around a couple things. One, how they would interact with the stories that would be happening in that space and how they'd interact with each other. So I definitely wanted to put Shatterstar on that team, as they had been lovers and amazing friends for years and years and years. And they play well off of each other. Where Richter is a little more laid back, a little more rational, Shatterstar was literally born for television. He's a show-off. He loves a good fight. So he's going to be, just this spectacular example of what it is to be an X-Men out there. And coming up with this team, I started thinking of almost like the divide that you see between the Defenders and the Avengers in the media property, where X-Factor Investigations is kind of your street-level team. So even though I did say I didn't want to do too much to change things, there are a character or two that I felt the need to resurrect. There's a character named Dead Girl who first appeared in a book called The Ecstatics, and she is literally a dead girl. I mean, she's a full-grown woman, that the character is deceased, but still functional. She's like a really pretty zombie.
Okay, I guess that was my next question, was whether she was a zombie or not. But okay, continue.
She doesn't, she never had felt the need to eat people. At least not in any of the books.
Okay.
And I would definitely not write that in there. But one of the things with that character, in an investigative setting, having someone who could telepathically communicate with spirits and the dead would give them new opportunities to chase down mysteries. Now they can avenge a murder that happened with no one else having been a witness of it, because you have Dead Girl there to create those stories.
Was there ever a specific issue that you really liked to see Dead Girl in?
Not specifically. She was a very different... In the Ecstatics, the main point of the team was to die, for lack of a better way to say it. Like, they were this huge social experiment where, everyone was like, oh, it's this corporate-run X-Men team. The first issue, just about the entire team gets slaughtered, and they just slap new people in there as they die, because it's almost like a Suicide Squad. You're not expecting longevity out of those characters. Yeah. So with that, I was also going to resurrect Skin. Now, Skin was part of Generation X, and I feel terribly underutilized. Skin's mutant power was that he could stretch his skin and manipulate it in different ways. Also, he had come from a more urban environment, something that we might be very used to.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, having a character who would know how to talk himself out of a situation if there were gangs there, a character who could literally change what he looks like, and having that opportunity to really explore his personality, the way he can manipulate his powers, would add a lot of texture to the book, especially with other characters who haven't had that kind of background, that kind of setting. Shatterstar has never been in some of the situations that Skin would be completely comfortable. Another character that I wanted to bring onto this team is Stacy X. Stacy X was a former prostitute who emits pheromones that, allow her to have sway over people. And once again, with most of the teams most X teams have some kind of psychic in there, which gives them the ability to really manipulate a scene, because telepathy and mind control are really dangerous. I wanted to give this X-Factor team a bit of that, but I wanted it to be more grounded. I wanted it to be dirtier, grimier. I wanted it to be something where it's like a little more physical. And you get all of that with a character like Stacy X, where it's more about the emotional impact or, the way people respond, as opposed to just, waving your hand with a Jedi mind trick like you might get with Jean Grey or the White Queen.
Okay.
Also, there's a character named Prodigy. Prodigy was a character introduced with the school, and he was part of Cyclops' revolution. And the beautiful thing with Prodigy is that he's powerless. But his power was to absorb information. He was able to learn all the things that you've ever learned. Losing his powers, he hasn't lost that. The knowledge is that he's gained. So,
but he can't attain new knowledge?
Well, he, like a regular person does. It's not like...
But not like he used to.
Exactly.
Okay.
So what you get is you have a genius who's also a security expert who is working as, a consultant on the team. So with Prodigy, you have the opportunity to do like super secret spycraft, have people breaking into facilities. You have all the between Richter and Prodigy, any conversation about any situation gives you an opportunity to reveal whatever information that the readers of the book might need, because if anyone knows it, it's Prodigy. There's a character in the Generation X book that was relaunched in 2017 with Jubilee named Hindsight. He was a new character introduced for the book, and he basically has the ability to touch an object, touch a location, touch a place, and retro view it, like see what happened. And once again, I love the idea of pairing someone who's that brand new and that green with some of these other characters who have seen much more, both as members of the X teams like Richter, or just in life as you have with Stacy X or Skin. And this person who's like a brand new schoolboy, but has a power that's so useful to that environment. Let's see, that's most of the team. I also wanted to include Hollow. Now, Hollow used to be known as Penance, and that's with the Monet and her family, and things get a little complicated with them because they decided she has a pair of little twin sisters, and that all of them can combine in different ways to make different people. It's
interesting.
It's like a weird Mutant Steven universe or something. But the oldest member of that family had punished his sister and turned her into this monster. But then eventually she was able to escape, and the monster remained. And this monster is a very sharp, a very dark, a very tight, dense person who doesn't speak much. Like, she has the capacity to, but she hasn't been socialized. So having something that is the perfect stalker in the dark, having something that is your obvious Wolverine type, almost that person that you're bringing back from the brink in a team like this, where her skills could be extremely useful. But you also have a place where everyone spends a lot of time together. So you're going to pull out the personality, and you're going to see how patient people are with her, and you're going to see the way she responds to these differing worldviews. And it's going to be almost, a brand new wash over her. One last thing I wanted to do was include the character Gentle. Now, I'm not very knowledgeable about him. I'll admit that right away. But one of the things that I love is that he is the base. They've given him the basic bruiser power set, but he's a pacifist. I love the idea that the only real huge muscle on this team is someone who doesn't want to use it. And one thing I would really look forward to is the exchanges between him and Shatterstar, where Shatterstar is going to want to jump into a situation and cut everyone to ribbons and dance his way up through the cannon fodder. And Gentle's like, there's a back door. We ain't got to do that. So that becomes the X Factor investigation team. A group where you're not going to have people shooting plasma into the stars, so that when they do come across something big, the way they succeed is going to be through wit. It's going to be through their ability to function together. And because it's an investigation team, and because you're going to have a lot of mysteries, you have a lot of time for these different personalities to kind of to bounce off of each other and interact in the space together.
This is a very interesting concept for an investigative team. Minus the individual personalities on the team, is there anything or any other team outside of the X-Men universe that you would consider an inspiration for such an idea or such a pairing of people?
I feel like it's carrying on the tradition of what Peter David was able to do with the book. Peter David was very inspired by Jamie Madrox, the Multiple Man. Previous writers, they made him a very funny presence, but it felt like they didn't quite know what to do with it. Because one of his power is to make more of himself. And if you punch him, if there's impact, you make more. So he's a one-man army, but he's not a very strong army. In a world where you have people, calling down tornadoes and ripping planets in half and hurling things into the cosmos and, being able to be whipped through the sun and survive. He doesn't seem like that powerful to me. But one of the things that you found in Peter David's reading of him was, imagine a guy who never had to make a choice in his life. Take that, and when I say that, it's, hey, do you want to go out or do you want to stay in? I'm going to do both.
I'm going to do both, yes.
Hey, do you want to do this or that? I'm going to do both. Hey, do you want to study this or do you want to do that? I'm going to do it all. So then you ended up with a multifaceted person who had this wealth of information and didn't really take things very seriously. And then what he did was he proceeded to put him in situations where he had to make those choices. where there was no way to do both. And in doing so, he created this atmosphere where you had a team, they were in the middle of the mutant area, they did come across really strange things, but they persevered and they worked on it together. And I feel like with this team, with this combination, I'm really kind of pushing that same feel, but changing up the mechanics.
So no Scooby-Doo.
No Scoop. We're not going to be pulling the masks off the old men. No Jinkies here.
And just to make sure nothing else happens, we'll all take turns standing guard.
Who's going to stand the first watch?
Who else? The watchdog.
The watchdog? Oh, that's me?
I really love the idea for this investigative team. I'll admit I haven't read very much X Factor growing up, but you and we've been to multiple conventions together. That was at the time of the Peter David run on X Factor. That definitely piqued my interest and kept it. Peter David, for those of you who don't know, had original success for Marvel with his Incredible Hulk run. Legendary Incredible Hulk run. If you have a chance, use your favorite search engine and look up Peter David. Trust me, anything you read of his runs, whether it be Incredible Hulk or X-Men or X Factor, you won't be disappointed.
Anything that you read about the Incredible Hulk that isn't just Hulk smash is inspired by Peter David's run.
Can't allow you to control my mind. Won't